Good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening, where I shall continue doing some more of this tiny Micromaille and this lovely little tiny bracelet. I've been having a rather busy day today, and I just keep dropping off to sleep, having just sort of sat down a little while ago, eating a pizza and nodding off. And I do not particularly want to start and try and make reasonably precise measurements and things with a 3D printer. I will have a look at doing that tomorrow night and carrying on with it tomorrow night rather than tonight. I'm already dropping things like this this ring, so don't think I'll probably do much better with the 3D printer. So I'm going to take a chance of messing it up. We'll carry on with. If I do that, you can't see what I'm doing. We'll move the camera back down in a minute. Trying to find a decent position, especially to do micromailing, is challenging as much as doing the micromaille itself. And I can see me getting quite frustrated with this today, but we shall just see how it goes. Things like that. I can feel I'm going to go one of two ways. I'm either going to just get sort of fatalistic, not quite the right word, but sort of zen about it, so to speak, or I'm going to give up. And I'm not sure which it's going to be yet. Don't think I'll go halfway, but you never know. Ah dear, so I'm not actually sure whether even doing this is a good idea, or whether I ought to have done something like the pyrography. I just really didn't feel like trying to measure and line up 3D printer. As I mentioned, I kept dropping asleep. Got back in at about about 5:30, 5:45 with a pizza. I sort of ate that and was watching some videos and kept finding myself waking up. And then all of a sudden it was sort of 7:10 and I was waking up, and I thought, if I'm going to stream tonight, it's probably best not to be the 3D printer. And this was on the desk, and all the rings were out and things like that. So I figured it was a case of either I stream doing this, or I don't bother streaming tonight. And I kind of felt like I needed to do something just to get me moving, so to speak. As we were talking about last night, sometimes the streaming is the inspiration or the drive or the reason to actually do some things like art, or at the moment to actually do something, as opposed to nod off watching videos. So I have spent the day cleaning. Sorting stuff out. I was yes, feeling somewhat sleepy, probably because of the food more than anything, but then again, after a nice pizza, why wouldn't you feel like falling asleep in front of a television? In my case, the television is a a Twitch or a YouTube video, but same sort of idea really. So these rings are 3.4 millimeters. And as you can see, in relation to these are needle nose pliers, or chain nose pliers as they also get called. Not quite sure why chains, other than I guess if you're making chains with them it's easy to get in. But you can see them in relation to the size of my fingers, which of course isn't a great measurement just from the point of view of you don't actually know what size my fingers are. But I don't have anything else around that will show the scale of what 3.4 millimeters is. Because everything else is kind of like saying, you know, if I show you another set of rings, I've got another set of rings that are 4 millimeters, sorry, 5, nearly 6 millimeters across, but that doesn't help because it's still 6 millimeters. But these things are tiny. Take my word for it. But although they're tiny, we have to do exactly the same thing with these that I would have to do with bigger rings, doing exactly the same thing. Opening them, weaving them, closing them, and to some extent the challenge that the size presents is more one of of seeing it for a start, because the rings obviously are smaller, the gaps are smaller, but the other challenge about the size is literally, you know, they are not far off the size of the pliers, so getting 2 sets of pliers on them to close them up, for example, isn't the easiest of tasks. Bigger rings would obviously make it a lot easier to have multiple, you know, to get pliers on there, 2 sets of pliers on there. But part of the fact it's a challenge is it's, you know, part of it means it's fun as well. And I think, although they are awkward to work with because of their size, the fact that they produce such a nice tiny chain is part of the charm of working with them. So what I am doing isn't unique to this size, neither is the particular pattern that I'm weaving. It can be done with rings that are quite a lot larger than this. It's a weave which is called Turkish round or round maille. It's a variation on 2 sorts of weaves, I guess, or 3 sorts of weaves. It's a variation on a box weave. It's a variation on a European 4-in-1 sheet weave, and it's a variation on something else that I've completely forgotten. Well, anyway, at least 2. Yeah, the sheet and the box weave. Box weave would be 4-sided. This is 6-sided. But otherwise, other than that, is woven in an almost identical way. Other than the fact that a box has 4 rings in it, this has got 6, or a box has 2 and this is 3, depending on how you classify it or count it. So of course one of the things you have to do with chainmail is open a lot of rings. They come, if you buy them made or if you make them yourself, they come slightly open, and need to open them up enough to get to the very least to be able to get another ring through the gap. And generally speaking, it helps them to, if they're open a little bit further than that as well, so not just the bare minimum. Now these rings are made out of aluminium, and slightly differently to the rings that you will have, or you may see on the right hand side of the screen. You'll see some chainmail popping up from time to time. Most of that, the chainmail that's there, is also made from aluminium, but it's aluminium which has been anodized and polished, which gives it not only a lovely colour but a lovely shiny colour, which it will retain for quite some time. This, whilst it's aluminium, hasn't been anodized. It's called bright aluminium. This has just been polished. Now what that means is it's not got a colour, so it's sort of the natural colour of the metal. And I say sort of because obviously it's been polished, and that makes it look shinier than normal. And this will also, over time, will go slightly dull looking, and that's because it oxidizes, and when it oxidizes, it gets a whitish coating. That whitish coating on aluminium is usually a good thing, because it's, once there's sufficient of it, it doesn't oxidize anymore. It stops it oxidizing. So it's not like a piece of metal, for example, which a piece of iron, which if it oxidized would eventually disappear altogether. Aluminium doesn't. So it just it goes very slightly grey, and to actually restore that you would need to polish it, tumble polish it probably with a mild abrasive. Whereas the anodized aluminium, the usual cause for that going slightly dull is from wearing it. It's just skin oils, and the way in which you would tend to restore that is simply to wash it with a nice soapy liquid, and then that tends to go shiny again for a period of time. And you just keep repeating that as needed. Right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open the ones that are out of the pack, just loose on the desk, and then we'll weave them. So generally speaking, of course, weaving is the fun bit. That is just preparatory work. It's necessary preparatory work, but to be honest, this in itself sometimes can just be a calming exercise. You know, you're just repeating the same action each time, but it's well, you can either say it allows your mind to wander, or you can say it allows you not to think whilst you're doing it. Either of which can be quite calming. I guess the best bit would be if you could get somebody else to do this for you, and then you just weave the rings, but usually you don't find people that just like opening rings. Sort of thing in times gone past, if you had an apprentice, then this would be the job of the apprentice, opening the rings for the master to weave them afterwards. Although at this particular point I wouldn't say I'm a master ring weaver. Possibly, just saying, what would it be? A journeyman, something like that. Somebody who is still learning the craft. Well, of course, masters do continue to learn the craft. It's not something that you ever stop doing. You perfect your techniques of how to do it, and the ways in which allow you to do this more quickly and more easily. And of course, as you do more chainmail, what usually happens is you want to explore the different weaves that other people have discovered, or even attempt to discover some for yourself. But there are thousands of ways of putting rings together. You might not sort of think, given that it's just a ring of metal, but there are thousands of combinations of putting rings together or weaving them together, and they produce, well, yeah, very different looks. Some you'll like, some you won't. And actually, there's a once I finish this, I want to try out a new weave to me. That possibly won't be tonight. It almost certainly won't be tonight, because I'm only going to be able to get about another 2 inches done this evening. I know from experience, well, in there somewhere is a ring that wants opening. I know from experience that at this size now, it's taking about an inch, an hour per inch to weave. Right, 2 or 3 more, and then we'll weave. One way of clearing up the desk, you see, is to actually just go ahead and weave what you've got out, as opposed to putting it away. Right, we can now weave. First of all, I'm going to have some coffee. Gotta have coffee. Yeah, I like coffee. Don't have to have coffee, which is just a contradiction of what I've just said, but I like coffee. So that's wrong, but I was just studying it in any case to see whether I got it wrong. that hadn't gone through the 2 rings it was supposed to go through, it just went through 1. Yeah. Now, as you can imagine, 2 pairs of pliers and the rings that you're trying to weave it through, you don't get left with a lot of space on the ring itself, so that is some of the challenge. Some of the other challenge is getting this to actually go into the right configuration for you to get the rings through the right holes. There we go. And if you're looking at that and thinking, boy, that looks tiny, it is. I can't actually zoom in. Well, I can zoom in, but if I do zoom in, then it gets so hard to actually keep in frame that you'll be watching just the blank desk most of the time. So excuse me if it looks like it's rather a long way away. Hopefully at least that lets you see what's going on. Which reminds me, talking about seeing what's going on, I'm just going to remove this tail. There we go. Don't actually need that on now. It was there originally just to help me hold the starting section of this chain. Now why did I see? There we go. With when you're weaving these, you can't well, like this, when I just move it around in my hands. This is something I do sort of as a quality control at the end, is I will look for sparkles basically, because quite often a sparkle is, he says trying to get hold of it, is a ring, I've lost it, that isn't quite closed properly. They move very slightly. What you get is the cut end spark reflects like a, you know, just a flash of light as opposed to a general sort of sparkle, and it sort of just looks different. And what that is there's one there, is just the ends of the rings which have relaxed. The metal has like a memory for where it was bent to, and it wants to go back there, and it moves very, very slightly, but that slight movement is just enough to it's just enough to move it out of alignment. Sometimes you get fooled though, just because of the way the rings do shine. There we go. When you're doing this, you tend to do as I'm doing, hold 2 pairs of pliers. And the problem is with this size of rings, that's actually quite awkward to do. which also slows down weaving them a little bit, because picking up and putting down pliers all takes time. Did I mention you need to have patience when you're doing this sometimes? It's a different kind of patience. Some people think, oh, I wouldn't have patience for doing something like this, and it's not it's something I don't find. I don't find you need patience to actually weave rings, because it goes quite well. Well, it's going well, and whilst it's working, you don't have a problem. And patience is just something that doesn't tend to cross your mind. But where you need patience is when something doesn't quite go how you want it to go. It won't quite go through the hole, or the rings just keep slipping out of position, or something like that. That's when you need the patience, when things are not going right. So I guess I do need more patience than normal for doing this, with the rings being so small. It's harder to hold them in position, and they are. Now this particular size of ring is a little is on the loose side for this particular weave. There's a range of ring sizes that work for any particular weave, determined by something called the aspect ratio, which is the inside diameter of the ring divided by the actual wire diameter itself. And for any given weave, there's a minimum and a maximum that will actually work. It's all to do with passing through the gaps and how many rings go through another ring and that sort of thing. As the aspect ratio goes up, the weave itself tends to get looser, and past a certain point, the weave just won't actually look like a weave. It just looks like a jumble of rings, and indeed sometimes that's what it is. They just hold themselves in a pattern, and below the minimum aspect ratio, the weave isn't fluid. It basically would just be like a rod, which sometimes can be quite useful if you as an architectural sculpturing type weaving. You might specifically do that. Use aspect ratios which are actually too small for the weave, so that you get that stiff effect. This weave tends to work best with a slightly smaller aspect ratio than what I'm using here. How this manifests on this particular weave is I can squash it, so it will flatten out slightly if I apply a little tiny bit of pressure. Just the rings move out of the way, and so it goes very slightly oval rather than staying round. Sort of thing though, when you're wearing it, it looks round, it is round, and whatever. It's just at the ideal aspect ratio, it's you can't easily sort of flatten it slightly. It just rolls like a pencil might do, but it's very flexible even so. Right, carry on. So I've just done those, so it's now that. So you've always got to keep remembering which it's a simple weave, but you do have to remember where you're at. Having said which, of course, I say a simple weave. It is of course simple because I know what I'm doing and I know what the weave is. If you've not done this weave before, it probably doesn't it doesn't seem to be as simple. Where do I want to be on camera? That way? That way. Right. About there. It's it's one of these things that once you know what you're doing, lots of things become simple. When you don't know what you're doing, they appear to be really hard. And I say this is simple because I am literally repeating the same thing every other row. So every row I put rings through the sort of on the outside, so to speak, and every other row I put, then on the alternative rows I put the rings on the inside. So what I'm doing here is doing the ones that lay flat or point backwards, and then I'm about to do the ones that point upwards. Because if you look at the side, you see some rings point up, some point down, and they alternate, one row up, one row down. Oops, I just remembered something. Which I shall fix in just a moment. I shall just disappear off camera for a second. Well, a few seconds, but... Oh, good. I didn't have to do that. I thought I'd forgotten to start the recording. But I hadn't. It had done it itself, which I'm glad about because I had forgotten to start the recording. Once you understand the weaves as well, it makes it easier to see where you've got to, like there. To puzzle for a little bit, but I worked it out. Some weaves are harder than others to work out where you've got to. I know I spent almost 3/4 of a stream once actually with this particular bracelet that's sat here. This is a candy cane bracelet and made out of stainless steel. I spent an hour and a half trying to work out where I was at one particular point on there. Because I'd left it for several weeks. And again, that one is a weave which, once you understand it, is quite simple to do and produces a really complex pattern, as you can see. But when you are trying to work out just where the next ring should go, when you've not been doing it for a while, it proved a bit of a challenge. Got it in the end, and then was able to finish it. But I know at the end of that stream, when I came to sort of put it to one side until later. One of the things I did do was put a piece of wire, like the wire wrap that you saw at the beginning, that was on the end of this, through where the next ring was going to go on that weave. And what that allowed me to do then was, when I picked it up again, which happened to be a couple of weeks later, I was immediately able to say, oh, that's where that's going, and therefore that means this is where I am in the pattern. which of course was extremely helpful. And that's a tip, I guess, if you're not used to doing chainmail, you come to do it for yourself. If you're going to leave something unfinished at the end of a session, stick a piece of wire or a piece of string or anything through where the next ring is going to go. Have I done 3 there? Yeah, why does that not? No, it's right. Sometimes even when you know that you've done something right, sometimes it still doesn't look that way. Oh, blimey, that's only very slightly off, but it just looked like it was completely not fastened properly. See, that's the frustration thing. A ring there is pushing out of my way, and it's by doing so it's closing up the gap that I'm trying to get the ring through, and that's when it gets a little bit frustrating. That's when you need the patience. Ow. There we go, right. And that's another lie done. So this is going at something like about 0.5 millimeter each layer of rings that I put in place. Certainly not growing very fast. Well, it is growing quite fast for the size of rings, but in actual dimensions it's not growing very fast. Certain weaves, because of the way in which the rings are woven, will grow faster than they might otherwise appear to do. So that is a ring which won't sit in the right place. There we go. And because it wasn't sitting in the right place, it would have been difficult to get this next one through. So things like, for example, a half Persian 4-in-1 grows very quickly. Mainly because the rings are virtually at full, what I describe as full stretch, so the next ring in the sequence is virtually as far away from the ring you've just put in as you can get, and so it does grow quite quickly. These are more, this weave is more the rings laying on top of each other, not quite, but more or less, and therefore it's not a particular fast weave to grow. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. And there are some weaves where you can put 2 or 3 rings in and the length that doesn't actually even grow at all, just because of the way in which the line interact with one another. Actually, I was just thinking then, there's a weave, what's it called? I can't remember. But you start with a chain, and as you weave against that chain, the chain actually gets shorter. So you start with a chain about twice as long as you want the final weave to be, or at least as twice as long as you want the weave to be, and as you weave it, you effectively end up shortening the chain. You pull all the rings in, it sort of winds around itself, so to speak, and you end up with a chain which is half the length of what you started. What's it called? I can't remember. There is one on the in the shop if you have a look. I wish I could remember what it's called. Now, I was about to say they're two of the newest weaves that are in the shop, but it doesn't tell you what order they were added. So that doesn't help. There's a green and a black one, and I can't remember what the other colour is. But it's an interesting weave of well, I find it quite a fun and interesting weave to weave. But there again, I find all the weaves fun and interesting to weave, so that's probably not a lot of indication. I think one of my most favourite weaves, or there's two of them so far really, is the European 4-in-1. Sorry, not the European 4-in-1. God blimey, that's what I'm doing here. Is the half Persian 4-in-1. And the candy cane. The candy cane is the one that's on the desk in front here, and I'm actually wearing a half Persian 4-in-1. One is on my wrist here. That's this one, the duller looking one. That's a half Persian 4-in-1. This one is actually made out of sterling silver, and this is aluminium, the anodized aluminium. So the shiny one is not silver; it's silver colour. And the dull looking one is sterling silver, which probably wants polishing and cleaning actually. Sterling silver is an interesting metal. It's a fun metal to work with. It's quite soft to work. It goes together really nicely, and actually when it's clean and polished, it actually looks really nice and shiny. It kind of looks shiny like the aluminium one does, although it does have a different tone to it in colour. But unfortunately, unfortunately I can make sterling silver bracelets, and I can sell bracelets that are made out of sterling silver. I just can't sell them as being sterling silver bracelets, which may sound really confusing. I can make them out of sterling silver, and I can sell them, I just can't sell them as sterling silver, and that is actually a legal thing. The bracelet weighs more than 6.7 grams. Because it weighs more than 6.7 grams and contains precious metal, it has to be hallmarked if I want to sell it as being that metal. So if I want to describe the bracelet as being sterling silver, I have to hallmark it, which involves sending it to an assay centre who test it to make sure that the metal that's used is sterling silver. So it's more than 975 parts per thousand of silver with it, and therefore the rest is an alloy, or is another material to make the alloy. They certify it, and they actually will then apply the hallmark to the piece. So if somebody sells you something like a bracelet in the UK, and they describe it as a sterling silver bracelet, necklace, and it weighs more than 6.7 grams, then it has to have a hallmark. If not, they are actually performing a criminal act. It's not civil law, it's criminal law, which in theory the police can turn up and arrest you for. And also some other things you have to do as well, which is to do with displaying information in the shop with regard to sterling silver and other metals, and that applies to other metals as well. So if it contains gold and there's more than, I think it's about 0.6 grams of gold, it has to be hallmarked. And unfortunately though, hallmarking is not cheap, and certainly not on a piece by piece basis or on a one-off basis, which is why I don't sell sterling silver or other precious metals. Platinum I think is another one, which has to be hallmarked to be sold as platinum. I can't remember the weight on that one though, but that's one of the things. So whilst I can sell you a bracelet, a silver coloured bracelet made with 100% sterling silver rings, I can't say it's a sterling silver bracelet. Incidentally, you can sell sterling silver rings. You can sell them by the pound if you want to do so, and you can do so describing them as sterling silver rings, because it's the finished piece which has to be hallmarked, not the components. Actually, which is rather silly, because it means I could sell you in theory a kit to make your own sterling silver bracelet. I couldn't make it and sell it to you as a sterling silver bracelet, because if I sell it as a kit, I'm selling the parts, and you manufacture that. If you wanted to sell it, then you'd have to hallmark it. It's a bit of a weird thing sometimes. Right, I've just done the lay down one, so I need to do the stick up one. Okay, just that one there. And then it's time for another swallow of coffee. There we go. It's a heck of a lot easier when the two rings I'm trying to put this through sit side by side, and with that slightly lower aspect ratio, that's what they tend to do naturally. Here, because of the slightly larger aspect ratio, they slip past one another, and one goes underneath the other, and it's not as easy then to pass a ring beneath two of them. And there we go through that, and that one, yep. It's funny actually, just thinking then with the craze at the moment of spinners, the layout of these three rings when I put these particular three on for this layer, they lay out in that spinner, that that three triangular spinner configuration. So I don't know if it's visible to you, but if I just hold it, you can sort of see the three in a triangular format. Anyway, cup of coffee. Well, I'm starting to wake up a bit now, which is a good thing. It means I can get on with some other things as well, because I will finish streaming once I've done these rings, I think. I don't think I will carry on past there. I do intend to try and stream tomorrow night, and I did promise that we'd be doing 3D printer work at the weekend, so that would be tomorrow night. So we will, unless something completely unforeseen happens, we will be doing the 3D printer tomorrow night and continuing with that. Whilst I quite want to get that finished, I also don't want to rush it. Something I've learned over the years with things like that is I might as well take my time. Whilst I can do things fast, and there's a difference between fast and I'm going to say there's a difference between fast and quick, which doesn't make a lot of sense when I say it like that, but what I mean by that is you can do it fast and do it right, or you can do it fast and not do it right. And doing it fast and doing it right is sort of takes effort. But essentially what I'm trying to get to here is it's better, I've learned over the years, it's better to do it right first time. Which means if necessary, take your time doing it to get it right first time, because if you don't, I mean, if you're to go back and disassemble half of it because you've missed something off, then you know all the speed that you had didn't actually serve you any purpose. So it's I've sort of found doing all sorts of kits and things like that it's a lot better just to take your time, make sure that you're doing it right. If necessary, take time to check it, and if you don't feel like doing something at the time for any reason whatsoever, it's probably best not to. And generally speaking, that is something that even if, you know, like this, which I do pieces for commission or in the shop, so it's the same thing really. If I'm really not feeling like doing it, it's not worth doing it, because it's so easy to make mistakes, and then the time it takes to correct those mistakes afterwards just eats up all the time that you sort of saved by trying to get it done. So it's rather quiet tonight on the channel. I'm guessing actually there's nobody at all watching. If you are, welcome to the stream. I'm saying I'm guessing nobody's watching just purely because I've got a stream deck over there. It's a really nice piece of kit, and one of the things it's got on it is a display of the number of people that Twitch say are watching, and currently it says 1, and almost certainly that 1 is a preview picture of my own stream, either or it's counting Moobot, and therefore it would seem that I'm the only one on my channel tonight. But if you are there, and I gather you may not be showing up if you are, for example, not logged in, then welcome to the stream. Zarragan Art is me, and you're looking at one of 6 crafts which get now getting I would say getting done, which show up on the channel from time to time. This jewellery making is one of them. So jewellery making covers quite a few things. This obviously is chainmaille. Well, it's not obvious, but it is chainmaille. It's only obvious if you know what chainmaille is. I also work with beads, and that might not sound particularly interesting, beads, but the beads I prefer working with are tiny. You get 11 of them into an inch, so they're just over 1/10 of an inch. That would be about 2 millimeters in length. So I weave beads that small into all sorts of things, really. Flat bands or tubular type bracelets. So working with beads, they're made out of glass. I also work with just cord, which is kumihimo, Japanese cord weaving. Something else as well, that jewellery wise, that has just escaped me completely. But there's a fair few different things done in jewellery terms. Then there's carving. So we do relief carving out of wood, which is usually what you carve from, not always, but usually, and that's done with hand-held chisels. So extremely sharp chisels. You say handheld, so not using a mallet to drive them, just driving them by hand. Sometimes you use knives as well, which are just as sharp. And make everybody cringe because, of course, of the quite often you cut towards yourself. So there's the carving. Then there is a picture making technique which is very similar to the way in which rugs are made. So that which is called punchcraft. Involves driving something that resembles a hypodermic needle through cloth and dragging a wool thread through with it, which is the way in which rugs are made. Another picture making technique which is called scraper board. Scraper board is a 3-layer board. It's like cardboard or wood on which a layer of china clay has been spread, usually china clay. Although these days they do use other materials like tin or gold foil. And on top of which is then spread a layer of extremely black Indian ink. And once all of that's dried, and I don't make those boards, I buy them, but that's how they are made. The way in which you form images then is by scraping away that top surface using any sharp object, like a pen nib or a scalpel or anything basically. You scrape it away and then form the image out of that black and white material. Another form of picture making is pyrography, art formed by painting with heat. Really, it's pyrography is done with a heated tool that effectively cooks the surface of the wood, turning the wood various shades of brown. And I say wood there because it's generally, well, that is what I work with. Occasionally play about with paper, doing it with paper, and you can do it with various other organic substances as well, like leather for example, although I haven't. And despite the fact that I only do 6 things on stream, I usually have a real problem remembering what those 6 are. And then that's the problem I've got at the moment, is remembering, or trying to remember which ones I've forgotten. And I keep saying I'm going to write them down so that they're in front of me when I stream. And that way I'd be able to remember what they all are. Or rather, I'd be able to cheat and look them up as to what they all are. So there is pyrography, there is scraper board, there is jewellery, there is punchcraft, and the other one, which has escaped my knowledge at this moment in time, is, he says, looking around, carving, pyrography, scraper board, punchcraft, jewellery. Yeah, that's the 5, that's normal. And the 6th one is magic dots, also known as diamond dots when it's the real thing as opposed to a clown. I've been doing a couple of those on stream as well. Some plans for later on in the year are to do airbrushing. Something I haven't done for a couple of years now is any airbrushing, but I do intend to, or I have the intent to do some airbrushing on stream. There isn't actually a lot stopping me doing that these days. I used to have a problem with the fact that I didn't have the space to do that on stream. I couldn't actually get a camera into the airbrushing space. Now I can put the airbrushing space where the camera is, because I tend to that used to be, is that used to be? I use an air filter to stop, well, not to stop overspray, but to stop basically breathing in the overspray. So I can now do that, so I don't actually need to wear a mask. That was not going in the right way. Is that because I'm looking at that and I am thinking, is there a ring missing? There. It kind of looks like there's a ring. No, there's that. What's that? The ring that's missing is that one. Yeah, that's where it's missing, it's that one there. Yes, it's a good idea to wear some form of breathing safety mask. When airbrushing, because the paint is very fine particles. It does bounce off the material that you're painting on. Just generally gets into the air, and of course you then start to breathe it, so still doesn't look right. No, something is drastically wrong there. Let's take that back out. That looks okay, that looks okay. That looks okay. So I'm just concentrating on trying to work out No, that's not it. There is definitely something. There's a ring missing there. The nature of the fact that they lie one on top of another does help you sort out. Yeah, that one doesn't look. I think I've done that row completely wrong. Let's take that set of rings out. So what we're going to do now is find the, there it is, find the join. I think what I've done is overlay two sets of rings one on top of another. There is only two places you can put a ring through really in terms of this weave, if you're following the weave. And it looks like I've managed to do it completely wrong. That ring is missing from there. Is it? Is that ring missing from there? I think that's what it is. I think I've probably skipped a row. Put that through there like that. Excuse me, I'm concentrating on this just for the moment. If I were then to put that through there like that, does that sit properly? I think that's what it is. Okay, let's close that ring up there. As I say, I mentioned before, this is a relatively simple weave. There is only sort of, you know, there's two patterns. We might call them a unit, or two patterns make a unit. Two layers, and you know, there's really only a case of it's either one layer or the other layer, and you can't easily. If you're working on one layer, there's only one place the rings can really go to make that layer work, and when you're working on the other layer there's only one place, and I seem to have royally messed that one up just a minute ago. And is that lying? I think I'm still not convinced I've got this right. I think I have, but it's just incidentally these chains are actually hollow, so I can't I can't do it with this because it's a bit thick, but I could in principle put a wire right down the middle of there. Now that's an interesting idea. Ooh, that is an interesting idea. Now then, you might just have... Interesting. very interesting. Sorry, this is just one of those events where a design happens, and what's just happened there is I have literally, suddenly thought, yeah, I can put a wire down the middle of there, and if I put a wire down where that brad all this pointy thing is, and I actually feed it all the way through the bracelet. If I use memory wire, it should go all the way through, and if I then put a loop on the end of the memory wire, or potentially a cap of some kind, then I don't need a clasp. Because memory wire you can just slip over your wrist, but it needs to be longer. So you've got like a claspless bracelet, so you actually still have the chainmaille look, but without the problem of actually trying to fasten a clasp on the end of it. But the only thing is, it would need to be at least 1.5 times the normal length. So let's say for a woman, the normal sort of average length is about 7.5 inches, but that's clasp to clasp. So I'd actually need about 10.5 to almost 11 inches of this to do that. But it potentially, because the fact that I can get that down there and the memory wire, it would be a challenge to feed it down there, but it's not that much of a challenge because this is basically a tubular form. That would be interesting. I may not do it with this, but it would be an interesting thing to do. Chainmaille, which doesn't have a clasp, you just sort of wrap it around your wrist, go around 1.5 times. Quite often memory wire bracelets will go around about twice maybe, but to be honest, that would be even more expensive. But that was an interesting idea. So yes, we've just designed a new bracelet, and this ring size would be ideal for that. A bigger ring size, the hole down the middle would be bigger, and it would be sort of figuratively speaking, it'd rattle about on the wire. But at this size, it would be a perfect fit. Right, I just want to do that. Yeah, that's what I thought. So, but yes, so if anybody is currently watching and the viewer list hasn't caught up yet with it, yeah, 5-6 crafts. I am planning later this year, with some luck, to do an introductory course to glass or flame work, and if that proves to be as much fun as I hope it is, then the intent is that I will take up flame work, and that then will be something else that gets shown on stream. So there's planned for, well, that went somewhere. planned for later this year then is airbrushing, potentially flame work. There's the glass engraving. I've done a little tiny bit of that on stream, but again, now that I can put the air filtration in front of me, I'm able to do that on stream as well. So I just need to connect up the big compressor for that. And so glass engraving, also high-speed rotary carving as well, electric carving, using a really high-speed rotary tool. So not your Dremel, because that's not very fast at all. I'm talking about sort of this 150,000 RPM as opposed to Dremels, which are around about 30,000, so about 5 times faster. Basically a dentist drill. And it actually uses the same tool set as I would use for the glass engraving, and in some cases it's actually the same tools. So once I set one up, I can do the other as well. Although I also have a somewhat larger wood carving motor set, so I can do some big 1/4 inch burrs as well as the little tiny dental drills. So I can do some fairly hefty, yeah, that is correct, some fairly hefty rotary carving. I also have some perlers set around here behind me, and I can find a subject that I actually want to do in them, because I actually want to do more like a photographic image than just the usual sort of sprites. What else have I got to do on stream? Because one of the things we have done in the past was build a quadcopter, and I must try flying that again this year. But in addition to the 3D printer that I've got here, I've got a small laser cutter or laser engraver, and by small I mean 2 or 3 inch diameter square bed. Actually it's about 4 inches square, I think, is the bed. So it is small, but something just to play and experiment with. It will cut very thin wood or card, but otherwise you consider it a laser engraver. And given that I do pyrography, it's sort of a laser driven pyrography in a way, it's just something new to play with. I also have to complete at some point an actual 1/12 scale tank, which I can now do on stream. And to finish that, I need to be able to do some airbrushing to some of the parts, hence that's dependent on me actually being able to start airbrushing, and then that's probably about one of the first things you'll see being airbrushed on stream. I also have a 6-wheel model Ford Tyrrell racing car, the body of which needs painting, so that's something else to be done on stream. And I have a 1/14 scale articulated truck and a 1/14 scale tanker trailer for it to be done on stream. And I'm scratch building a low loader for the same. Actually, I've got two other tractors, one that's already built and one that's still to be built, and I'd like to get a scratch builder trailer to carry the tank. And in the same line, I'd like to be able to do It's like a 1/12 or 1/14 scale bus. So I've got some parts to do that. It won't be quite scratch built, but it will be largely built scratch built. The main chassis components and drive chain will be from from a truck kit. But I haven't quite decided what I want to build in terms of that bus yet. Whether my first thought was like a tour bus for, you know, a rock tour bus, music concert type thing. So laid out like a luxury touring coach with sort of beds and things. The other thing I was quite interested in doing is a bendy bus, for no other reason than it bends. Both of which will be pushers, which is an interesting concept. A lot of remote control models pull, so they drive whichever wheels it is, but the motor's on the front, and effectively you can think of the motor as pulling the chassis, whereas you put the motor at the back like they do on buses and it pushes because it's behind the wheels. That was something potentially to do. And then on top of that, then I've got quite a few plastic kits to complete around here. Mostly of helicopters. Helicopters kind of fascinate me. So I've got, for example, a number of remote control helicopters, and I must charge the batteries on those. Not only just to maintain the batteries, but to actually fly the thing this year. I haven't flown them for a year, so it's probably good if I did. Now then, let me just get 3 rings, and then this will be it. And I've also got some other things that I could do on stream as time allows. So for example, I can make rugs. I've got some latch hook rug kits to make, and I also do cross stitch and tapestry and what I believe would be described as needle point. So finishing a number of those things off is also possible for me to do on stream. So a fair number of things to keep us busy over the time. Now most of that probably will get done once I start more or less streaming every night, which I'm not doing at the moment. It tends to be just weekend, one night a weekend at the moment, and the odd ad hoc stream as I manage it. But once we get back to a more regular streaming schedule, then I will be doing a lot of those other things. So that's how far we've got tonight. Just as a matter of interest, so I'll see the difference. I don't know if you can see the difference in size between these two. And you certainly see the difference in size of rings. This is 1/4 inch. This just starts to look of a similar-ish sort of size, just purely because of the bulk of it, the way it's been woven. But these rings are significantly smaller. If you can see an individual ring like that one there, you know, you can almost put 3 of these tiny ones inside the big ring. You can't really see that very easily, I'm afraid, but it is. But there we go. How long is this now before I finish? Let's see how long it is. I'm expecting it to be about 5 inches. So, about 4.5, just under 4.5. So 120, 2, 3. Yeah, that's about right. An hour. It's about 1 inch per hour. So we've got about another 2 inches, about another 2 hours potentially before that's close to being finished, because that'll take it to about 7 inches, and then a clasp adds approximately ½ an inch to it, and therefore that will be the 7.5 inch bracelet. Unfortunately, it won't be cheap, not with 7 hours of work in it. Right, so that's going to be it for this evening. It's now 10 to 9. I've been broadcasting almost for 2 hours, but I've used the rings. I'm not going to open any more. I'm going to leave it at that point and switch my glasses so I can see more of a distance rather than the close worker, which is what that is. And I'm going to say good night. Thank you anybody that's been watching. Feel free, of course, to follow me. That would be fantastic if you are watching. If you're not watching, then I'm pointless saying that, isn't it, really? Feel free, obviously. I'm going to point out the fact, as Moobot has been dropping into chat every so often, that chainmail like this is available from an Etsy shop, or you can indeed just drop me a message here on Twitch if it's of any interest. So it's zaragonart.etsy.com. You'll also find I have a website as well, zaragonart.com, which does tend to explain a little bit more about some of the crafts that you will see on the stream from time to time, and potentially a little bit more about some of the pieces, especially things like the pyrography or the carving. But that's something else to check out. And coming soon, the TM on the end is going to be a lot of the history of the Twitch history, and the recordings made of well over a year of broadcasting. I'm gradually going to start and upload those onto YouTube, so they will be available to watch right back to the, I think I might even have the very first episode. So but that's coming soon. There's almost a terabyte of recorded video, and so that will take some time both to split and render and upload. So that won't be something that will be happening tomorrow, but keep an eye out. And that's and that, of course, is YouTube/user/zaragonart, or just look for Zaragonart. Nothing on it at the moment, but it is there. Anyway, hopefully should be back tomorrow night, and I did promise this weekend I'd be doing the 3D printers, and that will be tomorrow night. Hopefully I'll be a bit more awake, because I don't want to make mistakes trying to align that, otherwise it'll take a lot of sorting out. But I'm looking over there because it's actually just sat to the side of me. We will continue with that tomorrow evening. In the meantime, again, I'll just say, repeating myself, thank you for watching. Hope to see you again in the future. And I'll say bye for now.